Welcome to the Glen Ferris Inn with Dining with Dan and Becky. And our guest tonight is Terry Bowe and his wife Ruth. And Terry is a State Farm agent, has been for 33 years, and he's one of my agents. And Terry is a State Farm agent, and he's my agent in the Charleston area. I built his office some years ago for him. He's one of those agents that's called a $1 million agent because he sells so many life insurance policies over the years that he's a millionaire type agent that sells a lot of insurance. And he has auto and house mortgage type insurance.
Homeowners. Right.
Homeowners insurance, that's right. Okay. And he's a real good fella. And Terry's been coming here and having dinner with us, and we appreciate him as an agent and as a friend. He's a real good friend of mine. Well, last week Becky made a great meal, and we hope that Becky can outdo herself this week, and I think she will. So what do you think? Let's see what she has done, and let's go to the kitchen and see what she's cooking for us this evening. Okay?
That sounds like a plan to me.
Okay.
Welcome back to the kitchen of the Glen Ferris Inn. I'm Becky, and we are planning on having a dinner tonight. For Dan's menu tonight, he selected shrimp cocktail, a tossed salad, New York strip steak, almost wild rice, cauliflower, and it's a new recipe that I'm just developing, and an apple turnover. So if you're looking at your time to make your menu or to make your dishes, which one of these do you think would take the most time? Well, if you guessed the apple turnover, you're absolutely right. First of all, you have to make your dough, then your apple filling, then you have to fold it up into the turnover and bake it off. And since we need it cooled before we put the glaze on it, let's get started on it. Okay. Let me get the cookbook and the fixings, and we will start our dough. Now this is Danny's mother's, Grandma Hill's apple turnover recipe with one exception. I am using the pie dough recipe that my mother developed years ago for the inn because it's so soft and flexible and so easy to work with. So I've already washed my hands, clean apron, hair is contained, so all we need to do is glove up. Now, since this is going to be baked in the oven at 350, you do not, technically speaking, need gloves. You need them when your food is not going to be cooked or has already been cooked. And I do not know how well these will turn out with pie crust anyway. So you need 2 cups of flour, all-purpose. And at the end, we use Hudson cream only. It's a high gluten flour, but it just turns out absolutely perfect when you're baking. Then I have half a tablespoon of sugar and a pinch of salt. Now I'm going to mix that up. Okay. Then we have got 1/3 cup of Crisco, or solid shortening, any kind will do. We are going to mix it up until the texture of the dough resembles small peas. Now, there are several ways you can do this. You can use a pastry blender. You can use 2 knives, but I've always felt that that was time consuming, and I prefer doing this. You can rub your hand together, and that breaks it up, the shortening, a little bit faster, and mixes it well with your flour. So look at this. The shortening has been incorporated. It's fairly uniform. I'm going to do it one more time. I see two large lumps. All right, now we used a 1/3 cup of shortening. A standard pie recipe, if you do the no-fail recipe, it calls for a combination of vinegar and water. If you use a traditional recipe, it calls for 2 tablespoons of water. And you have to mix this until it's really, really a stiff dough. And then you have all of the problems rolling it out and working with it. Well, with this recipe, you use equal amounts of shortening and water. It makes a very soft dough. It almost has biscuit-like consistency. So we're going to add in 1/3 cup of water, and then we're going to mix it together until we get our pie crust. It is easy to roll out. It is easy to work with, and with just a little bit of sugar in the dough really makes it a nice crust. I think it's a little bit sweet, and it bakes very crisp. So here is our pie dough, finished. Look how soft it is. It's very flexible, it's easy to work with, it holds its shape, and it's delicious. What more could you ask? Okay, I'm going to clean up my area, and then we're going to roll this out and make our filling. So I'll be back in just a moment. Okay, we have our filling, we have our pie crust, extra flour to roll it out in, a rolling pin, and you can find amazing things at a hardware store that you can use in your kitchen. On this, it's just a basic little thin spatula. I use it for a variety of things, from smoothing frosting on a cake to cutting out pie dough. So let's go ahead and get this done because it's a time-consuming process. All right, you have your pie dough. We're going to cut it out into a rectangular shape, about 4 or 5 inches by 6 to 8 inches. Now, if you are making a circular pie crust to fit in a pie pan, you start out with a ball. If you are going to be making a rectangular pie crust like we are, you're going to start out with a log. So you're going to put it in your flour, and I always turn it over once because you do not want your rolling pin sticking to your dough. So I have wooden rolling pins, I have plastic rolling pins, I have fancy rolling pins that I have bought at Arts and Crafts Fair that are made from different woods. You will find as you bake and as you make pies that you will decide on what preference you want. I like the wood. Andrea, my oldest daughter Andrea, this week was working on my Christmas list, my wish list, and she said, "Mom, how about another rolling pin?" Well, I've only got 4, and one of them is just magnificent. I'll bring it next day when we make a cobbler so that you can see how great it is. This week in Charleston is the Arts and Crafts Fair, so I plan on going to that. Boy, I do not have this in a rectangle, but that's all right. Now, I'm going to straighten it up, move this out of the way, and I am going to cut this into a rectangular shape. Do not throw away the pie crust that you are cutting off, because you can use it, and if you don't need it, you can always make those little cookies that I know your grandmother made for you out of leftover pie crust with butter, cinnamon, and sugar on the inside. So even when I rolled it out, I didn't form a rectangle. I have sure made it into one. Now what I am going to do is sort of measure maybe 3/4 of this, and then I'm going to put a mark. And then I'm going to cut it down the center. Then I will measure again 3/4, put a mark, and cut it down the center. I'm going to make these a little bit smaller. Okay. Now I'm going to take these and roll them out singly. I'm going to make it a little bit larger and a little bit wider. Now let me pull out my recipe book and see what we do next. You will find this recipe in our Green Grandma's Kitchen cookbook. It's Grandma's Apple Turnovers. So what we're going to do is put our filling in. We're going to have 1/3 cup of apple slices that have been parboiled to where they're just a little bit soft. If you keep your apples fresh and crisp, they can easily tear your dough when you go to fold it over, hence the name turnovers. And then we are going to take evaporated milk or water, and we're going to brush the outsides all the way around so that our crust will become a little bit sticky. You're going to seal this. This is related to the fried apple pies that I guess everyone's grandmother in the United States made. Now this will stick. And you say to me, but apples cooked without a sweetener in it just aren't any good. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to add 1/3 cup of apples and 1 tablespoon of sugar. Then we are going to put cinnamon, and I like a lot of cinnamon on mine. I hope Dan's guests do too. Then you're going to fold over the top and you're going to seal it. Then we're going to brush this with just a little bit more of our liquid. Now remember, you can use milk, you can use evaporated milk, you can use water. And once you have that done, you're going to fold the edges over to secure them so that none of your liquids, your apple juices, will come out in your pan. After all, that's part of this. You want to keep as much apple flavor inside this as you can. Now you want to leave your crust a little bit thicker than normal so that when you do fold it over and your crust tears, you are still able to push it together and make a seal with the pastry brush. And again, if you buy a traditional pastry brush that has the horsehair bristles and the metal here, I just want you to be aware of the fact that when you use it, your water does not go up inside the metal to wash out any bacteria that may be there. So I threw all of mine away, and I got these little pastry brushes that does not have the metal on it. I am going to take the evaporated milk, brush it over the top, now these are kind of delicate, so make sure you use both hands. Now look at that. Isn't that a beautiful apple turnover? Now, if I were not going to put Grandma Hill's glaze on it, I would sprinkle this with sugar and bake it off. But since we're going to put the glaze on it, you don't need the extra calories from sugar that makes your crust so enticing. So let's finish this for all 6 of them. Then we're going to put them in the oven, then bake them off. Pull them out when they're golden brown, let them cool, and then we will glaze them. So let's get this done. The next item that we're going to be making off of Dan's menu is going to be our almost wild rice. Now that recipe is in our Taste of the Inn cookbook in case you're interested. We're going to have 1.5 cups of white rice, butter, chicken broth, salt, and basil. And we have already pre-cooked that so that it doesn't take too much time to prepare this. Now you brown your rice in your butter, then you cook it in your chicken broth, and it's 3 cups. Remember, when you're doing white rice, you take the amount of rice you actually have and double the liquids in it. So if you use 2 cups of rice, you'll use 4 cups of liquid. If you use 5 cups of rice, you'll use 10 cups of liquid. Then you put it in your pan, heat it until boiling, and once it boils, you put a lid on it and just let it sit there cooking in the hot liquid until it absorbs all of our water. Now for almost wild rice, we're going to add 1 cup of chopped pecans and 1 cup of chopped mushrooms to our cooked rice. Let it simmer together until it's done and we're okay. Now I want to show you something. Earlier in October, I went to Pennsylvania to visit my daughter. She was having surgery and I wanted to go up and help take care of her. And we had gone to a marvelous grocery store, and I don't even remember the name of it, but it was just massive. I just went up aisle after aisle after aisle, just looking at things saying, boy, I wish I had a grocery store. No, I really don't, but you get the idea. But they had this little gizmo. It is a, what is it? An Easy Pull food processor by Xylus. And of all of the tools that I have in my kitchen, and I have a lot, a food processor aggravates me more than anything. Number one, you can't put it in the washing machine and clean it and then sterilize it because it's electrical, even though you can do the blade and the attachment. But this one, okay, you have a razor sharp blade in the bottom, and I do mean razor sharp. And it has the little spindle that it fits on. Then you put all of your vegetables in that you're going to be chopping, put the lid on, and it is sealed in case there's a liquid so it won't come out. And then all you do is pull the handle. Now how cool is that? And then when you're doing your cleanup, you just wipe out your bowl, put it in the dishwasher, put your knife blades in the dishwasher and the top. And it's easy cleanup, easy storage. Don't have to mess with electrical components at all. So let's get this done. All right. I have a saucepan with just a little bit of water in it, and I do mean a little bit, slowly getting warm. I am going to add my rice. You have to watch out cooking rice. Generally, after I cook it, I wash it to remove the gluten so that my rice does not stick together. You notice this one isn't sticking together, and you say, well, Becky, what did you do? Because I know you couldn't wash it because it has basil in it, it has salt in it, and if you wash it, you're going to lose your flavorings. And no, I didn't. I did not wash it. When you take this rice, even your white rice, long grain, and you cook it in the stove with butter, stirring constantly until your rice discolors or becomes a soft golden brown like this did. For some reason, that gluten does not stick together and make the glue. Now we've got this warm, so what I am going to do at this point is add the pecans. And I'm going to mix those up. And I know everyone is wondering, why on earth would I put pecans in it? Well, remember, this is almost wild rice. Personally, wild rice is not one of my favorite dishes. But if you look at this, once you add those pecans in it, not only does it give it extra flavor, but it gives it the brownness that you're associated with your wild rice. It has wild rice in it, brown rice in it, and just a little bit of the white rice. It takes a little bit longer to cook. It generally already has some herbs, or you add your herbs to it. Okay, now let's add our mushrooms. Now these mushrooms are a paler shade of brown. So remember, I told you, you have the wild rice, which is almost black. You have your brown rice, which is brown, and white rice in a traditional package of wild rice. So we want all three colors here. You want the white, you want the mushrooms, and you want the pecans, and that will give you the three colors that is normally found or traditionally found in a serving of your wild rice. Now look at that. How cool is that? I hope Dan likes it. I haven't fixed this for him before here at the inn with one of his dinners. So I'm going to remove this from the heat. I'm going to cover it with foil and still just let the heat seep through it so that all of the flavorings of the rice, the basil, the salt, the pecans, and the mushrooms will slowly blend. So let's get that done. The next thing that we're going to prepare for Dan and his guest is breaded Parmesan cauliflower. Now we are just now working on the recipe for this, and it may be a little bit different by the time it's put in our next cookbook. But this is what we have to work with now. I have 1 head of cauliflower that we have cut into florets, and half a medium-sized onion, and we've parboiled it for 3 minutes. Because if you're going to grill it, you don't want it to be forever on that grill and burn. You just want it to have the flavor. Then I have got breadcrumbs, butter, olive oil, Italian seasoning, and parsley. Now what we're going to do is saute the cauliflower in half olive oil and half butter. Another thing you don't want to do, you don't want to have it so butterlogged that you lose the integrity of the breadcrumbs. So we're just going to put a little bit of butter and a matching amount of olive oil. Whoops, that was a little bit too much. Should have measured. And we're going to mix that together. We're going to let it heat a little. And at this point, go to a hard plastic spoon or spatula. You do not want to ruin a good skillet if it has been Teflon coated. So, there's half a head with onion, and the rest of the cauliflower. So we are going to let this saute. And we're going to go ahead and add our parsley and salt and pepper. And now we're going to add our salt and pepper. Remember, the rule of thumb that I use is 2 parts salt to 1 part pepper. I have 2 pinches of salt in here and 1 pinch of coarse ground pepper. Now we are going to mix this together. And that may be too much. I may have to go to 1 pinch and then a scant pinch. But you want it to be colorful, and that is where the parsley comes in. You want it to have a little bit flavor other than just the cauliflower, because unless you're eating raw cauliflower and dipping it in something marvelous, you don't particularly care for just the taste of cooked cauliflower on its own. So we're going to let this cook a little bit till all the liquid is evaporated. You want to stir it, not as much as you would if you were doing a stir fry, but you do not want this to brown. So, in the meantime, you are going to add half a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, and you can use any seasoning, but I chose Italian because we have got basil in the rice. So I thought it wouldn't hurt to have an Italian seasoning. If you're working with a Cajun type meal, you can add cayenne. If you are working with a French type meal, you can add extra Parmesan. So we have our breadcrumbs that have been laced with Italian seasoning, and you could have used oregano or basil. I chose Italian seasoning so we could get a little bit of all of it. So let me get this stirred again. Whoops. It just is not heating up good for me, guys. I guess it's because I've got a triple steel skillet here. So I'm going to turn it up a little bit higher. I don't want this to cook until the cauliflower turns to mush. You want it to keep its integrity. A little bit more butter on this and olive oil. Now remember, I use a mixture of the butter and the olive oil so that I will have the flavor of the buttering. The olive oil will lessen the amount of cholesterol that goes into your system. It will also add a little bit of flavoring on its own. And it's a very good combination to cook your vegetables in. Now, I personally like my vegetables par cooked by putting them in the microwave with a damp paper towel. Kind of hard to do with cauliflower. Corn of the cob tastes good that way. Green beans don't. So no microwaving green beans, guys. You need all of this liquid gone. So we're just going to let it simmer for a minute. And in the meantime, I'm going to start getting our shrimp dish ready. Now we have finished cooking our cauliflower. There is no liquid left in the bottom of the pan, and we're going to add our breadcrumbs. You have got to make sure this is liquid free for the simple fact that it will be dissolved in the water or whatever liquid you have, and then all it is going to do is make a dough, and we do not want that. So what we're going to do is add our breadcrumbs, and remember, we mix these with Italian seasoning just to give it a little bit more flavoring and to tie in the basil that is in the almost wild rice. Okay, we're going to toss it. Now look at that, isn't that pretty? And then lastly, we are going to add grated Parmesan cheese, and we're going to do it liberally. Not grated, I'm sorry, shredded. All right, you have your cauliflower, your onions, and your parsley that has been sauteed in a combination of butter and olive oil. Then we added our breadcrumbs, and now we added our shredded Parmesan cheese, and we're going to mix it lightly. And we have now got Parmesan cauliflower ready for Dan and his guest enjoyment. We hope. It sometimes takes a while to get a new dish to work out correctly. So the next thing we need to be doing is to work on the shrimp cocktail. I saved it because it doesn't take very much time at all. So give me a minute to get the shrimp and we will get started on that. I'll be right back. Okay, we're going to start and prepare the shrimp so we can put together the shrimp cocktail since that's served first. This is not a time-consuming process, but it has to be done correctly. If you have never cooked green shrimp and our shrimp has been peeled and deveined, okay, then this is how you do it. You get a saucepan of rapidly boiling water. Now you can put a crab boil in it, you can put Old Bay in it, or you can just leave it plain. Since we serve our shrimp when we're doing a cocktail with cocktail sauce, we chose to leave it plain. All right, your water's rapidly boiling. You put your shrimp in it, and once you do, notice your water has stopped. Excuse me. So at that time, you have just a few minutes for something else. You want to let your shrimp cook until your water starts boiling again, and then stir it and give it no more than a minute, because there is nothing worse than leathery, rubbery shrimp. And overcooking or buying them immensely gigantic is what causes that. Notice our water hasn't come to a full rolling boil. So I'm going to stir this. Notice it's already changed colors, at least on the surface, but that doesn't mean that it is cooked internally. Now, while we're waiting for our temperature to come up, let's go pull our turnovers out of the oven so they can cool. Then the last remaining things we have to do for Dan tonight is to cook the strip steaks, which we're going to do on our inside grill, and make the glaze for the apple turnover. So let's get that done, and I'll be right back. All right, let's check on our apple turnovers. Oh, nice and golden brown. Just look at that, guys. See, I didn't do my ceiling too large because some of the juices leaked out. But in the world of apple turnovers, this is not bad. We are going to let them cool. If you notice this, the crust on the apple turnover is extremely shiny because we brushed it with evaporated milk. There are generally 3 ways to finish off your crust. You can brush it with butter and drizzle sugar on it. That's what we generally do with our cobblers. You can make an egg white wash where you take your egg white, a little bit of water, and then you whisk it together and brush that on. Or you can use evaporated milk or evaporated milk with sugar. And since we're going to be fixing a very sweet glaze for the top of it, we chose not to put the sugar on it. Oh my goodness, guys, look at this. Our shrimp is beginning to boil. Let's get our spoon and check this out. Look at that. Clearly turned colors. The tails are on, and this is absolutely done. If you're not careful with this and don't watch it carefully, this is going to boil all over your stove, and you're going to have a mess to do. So we're going to drain this. We're going to put the shrimp on ice to cool it down, and then all we have to do when the time is here is to put the cocktail together. So let's get our ice and get our shrimp out of that heat. As long as our shrimp is in this pan of near boiling water, it is going to continue cooking. see how small they've already gotten in just the minute or the few seconds it took me to get this pan of ice. And these are very nice large. At one place I get 1620, the other place I get 1521 count. And they're very nice shrimp. And there we are. Our shrimp is on ice. It will cool down. There is no way that these are going to become contaminated with anything, because most bacteria do not live under 30 degrees, and our ice maker is set at 10. So let me get this out of the way. Then we're going to put the steaks on. Then we're going to make the glaze for the apple turnovers, and it is a get-go. All right, we're going to go ahead and start grilling the New York strips. These take just a little bit of time, and what we have here are 8-ounce strips. They're very nice strips. Notice that they have a lot of marbling in them, and New York strips generally don't have that. They are generally tougher than a ribeye. They're healthier than a ribeye because there's less cholesterol. And we are going to put these on our inside grill and let them cook. Now, if you're cooking a steak, the theory behind it is that you should only have to turn it once. You look, let me turn this around. You look at the side where the flesh is, not where the fat strip is. And when you can start seeing the brown of cooking up about a quarter of the way, if it's rare, a third of the way if it's medium, and then if it's medium well, a half of the way, then all you have to do is turn it. And there's other ways of testing to see if it's done too. Now, Dan asked me not to season these, so there's going to be no salt, no pepper on it, because one, he wants A1 steak sauce at the table. And then two, if they want it seasoned, they can easily season it at the table. So we're going to let that cook. Our apple turnovers are out of the oven. So we're going to make our topping for it. So let me get rid of these and get some lighter weight gloves on. All right, we have a small saucepan, and we are going to put some melted butter on it. Now remember, the more liquid you put in this, the more of your glaze you're going to have. And we're going to let this cook a little bit till the butter melts and starts turning colors, not too much. Let me get something and to whisk this with. I'll be right back. Okay, it is melted and beginning to simmer. So while that is simmering, I am going to go ahead and add confectioner's sugar mixed with white vanilla. So, ooh, that is hot, 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 hot. And we have to continue letting that cook. Now look at my glove, melted. Isn't that just a shame? I have 3 recipes of different frostings or glazes that are cooked. This one, the frosting for the fudge ribbon cake, and the glaze that goes on the orange coconut rolls, which I'll have to make for you guys one day. So here we are. Now all I have have in here is melted butter, evaporated milk with vanilla mixed in it. And do not use too much vanilla. Cooking this changes the complete taste of your glaze. So we are going to start adding confectioner's sugar a little bit at a time. I'm going to turn down this fire, and we may even have to add some more milk and butter, but I don't think so. It would be very nice to have a plastic whisk if you're going to be doing a Teflon coated pan instead of a stainless steel like I have. Oh, I added too much. Let me get a little bit more evaporated milk. Now I probably have too much milk. Isn't that the way it goes? And here we are, one perfect glaze for an apple turnover. Now, an apple turnover is similar, but yet completely different to an apple dumpling. You have got a fried apple pie, you have got an apple turnover, and an apple dumpling. The apple dumpling is made with the whole entire apple, and it's generally served with a cinnamon sauce. Your fried apple pies are, I don't know, I've never had a sauce on them. And my mom had 8 kids, and every 2 or 3 weeks she would fix fried apple pies. And she would have to fix 30 or 40 of them for all of us because we just loved them. And she always made sure we had enough for the 8 kids for several days. And then when I got married to Danny, his mother showed me how to do the apple turnovers, which I had never made or ever had in my life. So let's get our glaze on our dumplings, and then we will be set to go. Thank you, Ricky. I appreciate that. Excuse me a minute. Okay, all right, we're back. The last 2 things we have to do is to put the glaze / frosting on our apple turnovers and then put the shrimp cocktails together. So I have the glaze. I'll tell you, if you're afraid of sugar, this is not the dessert for you. You want to put it on when the turnovers are lukewarm because your glaze then will melt and run a little bit and make it even more attractive. This is why we did not sprinkle sugar on the crust. And you can put little designs if you want on it, or just leave it like I have it. And I'm going to leave mine without this. This is just entirely too sweet for me. I'll eat my apple turnover absolutely plain. Oh, but I wish you were here to smell this. There's nothing better, I think, than cinnamon. This is my daughter Andrea's favorite dessert, but it's so time-consuming. And, you know, rolling out each one of these individual, my mother should have had a medal for doing it for us 8 kids. So we worked on it, and we came up with our own version of an apple slab. We take a large baking dish and put a pie crust in the bottom, and then fill it about as full as we can get it of our apple slices. Then we put the sugar and the cinnamon, then another crust, and then we bake it, and then when it comes out, we frost it with this glaze. And so there we are. Boy, is it hardening. Now, when you're doing this, you need to be conscious of your gloves. Once your food cannot be cooked. You should only handle it with a utensil, or if you have to use your hands, with your gloves on. You do not want to handle other people's foods and get them sick. All right, so this is ready to go. Let's get that shrimp cocktail going. For our shrimp cocktail, you're going to have the cooked shrimp that we just prepared. You're going to have some lemon slices for garnishes and some cocktail sauce. You're going to have a container with ice in it. Now, I do not know how you can make this without gloves, because these will not be cooked and you really shouldn't be handling them. So, we are lining the outside of the glass with our shrimp. We leave the tails on because it makes a prettier presentation, even though I know that it's a bother to our diners. Okay. Boy, did they curl up tight. Now, I put the shrimp on first. And then between them, I put a wedge of lemon just to make it pretty. And in the center goes your cocktail sauce. Which is house made. And then we are just going to put our cocktail fork down into the shrimp, and lo and behold, we've got a beautiful shrimp cocktail. Okay, let me get this ready to go out. All right, now we're going to go and see Dan, meet his guests, and answer any questions they may have about the dinner. Remember, if you're in the area, stop by and see us. If you want any of the cookbooks, and we have 3 of them, we've got A Taste of the Inn, Grandma's Kitchen, and a yeast bread cookbook. You can order them over the phone by calling 632-1111 and giving your order to the desk clerk, or you could just email us at glenferrisinn@yahoo.com. And if you have something that you would like for us to make, or if you have a request for a repeat recipe, email us and let us know what you'd like. You have a good evening. Hopefully I'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
Well, Becky, what have you fixed for us this evening?
Well, I'm going to surprise you a little bit.
Okay.
All right, we're doing shrimp cocktail,
Okay.
and then a tossed salad, because I like tossed salad.
Okay.
And New York strip steak,
Okay.
almost wild rice.
Okay. Almost wild? Well?
Almost wild rice.
Okay. Why isn't it fully wild?
Well, because I make it with long grain white rice,
Uh-huh.
and I saute it in a combination of butter and olive oil until it turns almost brown. You know, it's still light.
Okay.
And then I cook it in a chicken broth.
Okay.
And so it's got the butter and the olive oil flavor. I put salt in it and basil in it, because all wild rice is herbed. That's just how it is.
Okay.
And then
So what else do you have for us?
well, I'm not finished.
Okay.
All right, then I masticated, real finely chopped pecans and mushrooms and added it to it after the rice was cooked, and
Okay.
let it all saute together.
Okay. All right.
And then we're doing
Well, I thought you were done, and
yeah,
I thought you
Dan.
had all kinds of stuff in it. Okay.
All right, then we're doing a new cauliflower recipe that I made up this morning.
Okay.
And because I wanted to do cauliflower, because, you know, we've already got enough starches there to kill a healthy horse.
Okay.
And then dessert's coming up, and it's even richer. And so I made up a cauliflower recipe, and it turned out pretty nice.
Okay. Well, I know that you're allergic to shrimp, and I know Ruth is allergic to shrimp. So what are you all going to do while I'm eating shrimp?
We're going to eat our tossed salad.
Oh, okay. So Terry and I are going to have shrimp, and you and Ruth are going to have salad.
Right.
Okay.
You didn't ask me about dessert.
Oh, I know. Well, I'll hold that one till we get closer.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Dan. Ruth, I'm fixing an old-fashioned apple turnover. Those one of Dan's mama's recipes. It's really
okay.
nice.
Now we're talking.
Okay. Well, I'm really anxious to get with it, and I'm also hungry. Okay.
Ah, here it
Bring it
is,
here.
guys. Just
Okay.
look how pretty they are.
Oh, yeah, that's what we're talking about.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Well, I love shrimp and salad.
Like
Do you know most
Oh,
people
sorry,
don't know
ma'am.
how to
Thank
cook
you.
shrimp properly?
a little Bubba Gump shrimp, right?
These are 15, 20 count, and that means there's either 15 or 20 shrimp to a pound.
Yeah.
Anytime they're talking about count. For example, I buy 80 count potatoes. Well, the potatoes came in a case of 50 pounds. So that 50 pounds has 80 potatoes in it, and that's how they size them. And these are 15, 20 count. Sometimes I have to get 16, 21. It depends upon which distributor I get them from, but this should be pretty nice.
You know what? I knew Becky was a math teacher, and now you understand why, right? Well, I haven't got past odd times ought yet.
I like
Well, let's
math.
dig in here and try to taste the salad.
That looks good to
See
me.
how it goes.
That's great.
Well, I'm going to be eating my salad.
Yes,
Excuse me 1 minute.
yes, I will. That is very, that's
a good,
delicious.
that's a delicious,
Delicious, yes.
isn't it? It's really good.
It's a whole lot better than I could ever do, that's for sure.
I always just pinch that tail off
Yeah.
so that
I think it's fantastic. And the greatest thing about it, I get to have it with my wife and Dan and Becky, and good friends here at the old Glen Ferris Inn. So it's all, and I'm all in, and it's a free meal. That even makes it better. And I'm hungry, for sure.
those shrimps are delicious with that
Yeah,
sauce.
they
Is
are
great.
delicious. They're delicious. Yeah. Well, I didn't grow up with shrimp as a child. But
I
love
didn't
it.
either. Our family didn't eat that much shrimp and stuff. We did eat oysters, but we didn't eat shrimp.
Really?
And it's a long ways from that. All right, well, let's dig in
That
and see
looks
what it
great.
tastes like
Looks-
here.
Looks really good,
I'm
Becky.
going to try the cauliflower first.
Yeah, me too.
A little different.
Yeah, I can guarantee you'll never find that recipe anywhere.
Mm.
But I think I need to increase the amount of butter that I sauteed it in.
Oh, it's got a great
It's-
taste,
it's
Becky.
not,
Really good taste.
It's not overcooked. It's
No.
kind of al dente.
Yeah, I worked real hard on that. What I did, I parboiled it for 2 minutes, and then it was al dente because I didn't want to keep it in a skillet with the olive oil and the butter until it became oil-logged. And I cooked it down until most of the liquid was out of it, and then I finished my little experimentation, and I thought it turned out pretty good.
Well, Becky, like I say, as a teacher, you give grades. I'm going to give you an A for this.
You're going to give me an A? Well, thank you.
Well, I think it tastes very good. Let's try the rice. The rice is very good. I taste those What are they, pecans or?
Pecans and mushrooms
Pecan,
and
mushrooms.
rice. And butter and olive oil and onions and basil and salt.
That's very good.
It is, it's
Well,
delicious.
thank you.
Now I'm going to try the steak.
That's good.
I like the cauliflower.
Yeah, I do too. I love this rice, Becky.
You like that?
Yes, I do.
The recipe for that is in
Got a
our
really,
white
got a really
cookbook.
nice taste to it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care too much for wild rice, whether it's plain or herbed. And I thought this would be a refreshing change.
Well, it's kind of a, is it a dietary meal? Is it pretty
I think it's white rice,
white rice? Well,
heavy carb,
heavy
cooked
carb.
in butter
Okay.
and olive oil. I think.
Well, it's good.
I think the only thing that was dietary about this meal was the salad and the shrimp cocktail, because there was absolutely zero fat in the shrimp cocktail and the cock grated. I just prefer the shredded Parmesan when I'm cooking.
I can taste that flame in the steak.
Tastes good.
Mm-hmm. Gave it a charcoal-like taste.
Mm.
Mine's tenders as well.
Mm.
Well, this is Black Angus steak.
Really?
It's the most tender meat in the
Oh,
country.
it is really good. Just the way I like it, Becky.
You can only get it from one distributor that I know of.
Is this from West Virginia? The steak is?
I order it from Buzz Food Service in
Bell.
Back in the day, it used to be Buzz Buttered Steaks. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. They
They
still
still
make
make
it.
The same,
those.
Oh,
same
yeah.
place, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Every now and then, someone will come and ask me if I'll order them a case, because they're having family coming in, and I do.
Oh. Becky, you're spoiling me.
The way to my heart is through my stomach.
They say that about all men, you know that?
Becky said it was a apple turnover, like my mother used to make, so we'll see
I've
how.
only got 3 recipes for that one, a little bit different each one.
Here comes our dessert.
I'm looking forward to that. Oh, yes. Oh,
Oh, let's see.
looks great. Looks good.
Thank you.
It looks great.
Well, did they take all your silverware? Uh-oh, here we go
Good.
again.
Mine.
Good.
Okay.
You still have an extra fork.
Well, I can eat with a spoon.
I'll have to go with a spoon myself then.
That is just so sweet that I can't eat it. It makes me
Oh, boy,
slightly
that's good.
nauseous. So I opted for no frosting on mine.
Mm.
Only it's a glaze. It's in between a glaze and a frosting.
Why do they call it frosting? Now, I gave you that question some months ago.
Well, when we were playing trivia, because the frost lies on the surface of the ground in wintertime, and this lies on the surface of your dessert, so they call it frosting.
You're absolutely
Okay,
correct.
so why do they call it filling?
Because
Apple
it's
filling.
in the middle.
No, I don't think that's good enough. I'm gonna accept that one then. Would you accept that, Ruth? No. Now, Andrea and I my oldest daughter and I came up with a recipe very similar to this, but it makes like a cobbler. But we do it the same way. We put the bottom crust, then the apples, then you put your sugar and cinnamon, then the top crust, bake it off, and then we fix this frosting / glaze and put it all over the top of it.
Wow.
And we call it an apple slab. and it works real well for me.
Becky, you are going to have to give Ruth this recipe. I'm not kidding you. That's fantastic. This is the best apple.
I enjoyed having my friends here, Terry and his wife Ruth, and I'm sure they have enjoyed the meal. And what do you think?
I think it's fantastic, and thank you very much for inviting Ruth and I. It was a total surprise to us. And
I bet it was.
But
I'm sorry.
I'm telling you, Danny, I'm telling you, you couldn't have surprised me better, because I'm so happy that you invited Ruth and I here, and we've really enjoyed every second of it.
Well, that's good. We appreciate you, and I find you as a great friend and a good business associate, and I appreciate you.
Same here.
And good night. We'll see you next week. We wish everyone a good evening, and see you next week at the Glen Ferris Inn.